There's a part of a man that no one sees. Not his ambition, not his words, not even his body. It's his ego, and not in the arrogant way we've been taught to fear, but in the way Carl Jung described, as the fragile, half-built structure holding together his identity, his worth, and his buried wounds. And here's the secret most never tell you. If you know how to reach a man's ego the right way, you don't just capture his attention, you awaken his devotion. Carl Jung believed that every man carries within him two battling forces: his outer identity, the face he shows to the world, and his inner mystery, what Jung called the anima, the feminine, intuitive side of his soul. But most men are never taught how to bridge that gap. They grow up being told to be strong, not soft, stoic, not sensitive, powerful, but not vulnerable. And so, a man's ego becomes a mask, something he wears to survive. It's where his deepest insecurities hide, and where his need to be seen, respected, and admired quietly lives. When you understand that his ego is not his pride, but his protection, everything changes. You stop reacting to his distance and start seeing his defense. You stop chasing validation and begin offering reflection. And it's in that sacred mirror that a man begins to feel something he rarely does: safe, seen, surrendered. The modern world teaches women to test a man's ego, to keep him guessing, to act like they don't care, to compete with his independence. But Jung would say, ego cannot be healed through threat. It can only be integrated through reflection. When you challenge a man's ego too harshly, he retreats. He armors up. He enters the battlefield of pride and detachment. But when you reflect it back with awareness, he softens. His guard lowers. His unconscious begins to recognize you not as a threat, but as a mirror. So what does this mean in practice? It means learning to speak not to his surface, but to his soul. To say things like, "I see how much pressure you put on yourself to be strong," or "You don't have to prove anything to me. I trust your heart more than your hustle." These are the kinds of words that bypass his logic and reach the boy who was never told he was enough without winning. They touch the part of him Jung called the inner child, buried beneath roles, work, and fear. Every man wants to feel admired, but not in the way you think. He doesn't want to be worshipped. He wants to be chosen, intentionally, not desperately. Carl Jung taught that every soul longs to be mirrored, and for a man, the most powerful mirror is a woman who is fully rooted in herself. When you admire a man from your wholeness, not from need, not from emptiness, he feels it. When you say, "I love how you think," or "I feel safe when you're near," and it comes from calm confidence, not anxious hunger, his ego doesn't just rise, it begins to open. Why? Because he doesn't feel controlled. He feels free to rise into devotion, instead of being pulled into performance. He senses that you see him, not just as a provider or protector, but as a full human being. And when a man feels both respected and emotionally safe, that's when his heart starts to lead. Jung believed the anima, man's inner feminine, is rarely developed without invitation. And that invitation is not made through noise, but through presence. Here's the paradox. It's not what you say that touches a man's soul. It's who you are when you're silent. Stillness is your power. Not passive, not submissive, but rooted, open, unmoved by games. When a woman sits in her own energy, at peace with herself, unattached to proving, chasing, or fixing, she activates something ancient in him. A remembrance, a longing. He may not understand it logically, but he feels it. Because the modern world exhausts a man's nervous system. But feminine presence, anchored, calm, clear, the one thing that calms his internal war. Stillness allows space for his ego to exhale, and in that space, something wild happens. He begins to pursue, not out of performance, but from instinct. You will see both in him, his light, his shadow, his potential, his patterns. Carl Jung taught that healing happens when we choose to integrate, not reject, our darkness. But it's not your job to fix a man's shadow. It's your power to reflect his highest truth even when he forgets it. Tell him what you see, not to inflate him, but to awaken him. Say, "There's so much strength in how you protect what you love." Or, "You carry wisdom even when you're quiet." These affirmations don't stroke the ego. They speak to the self, the true identity beneath all performance. When you speak to his higher self, he wants to become that version. Not because he has to, but because in your eyes he remembers who he is. The secret isn't control, it's connection. The world will teach you tricks, how to keep him interested, how to spark desire, how to play the role of the high-value woman. But Jung would offer a different truth. The soul doesn't fall in love with performance. It falls in love with recognition. Touching a man's ego in the right way is not manipulation. It's art. It's wisdom. It's a dance between your softness and his strength, between your intuition and his instinct, between your presence and his protection. And when done from a place of truth, not fear, you'll notice something incredible. He doesn't just love you. He begins to trust you, to reveal himself to you, to build with you, to rise for you. Because you didn't chase him, you mirrored him. You touched not just his heart, but the hidden place where his identity meets his soul. And when that happens, love is no longer performance. It becomes partnership. If this message stirred something in you, don't let it fade. Leave a comment, share your truth, and subscribe for more depth, more healing, and more soul-level connection.